Hi, hello. I hope many of you can understand me. Unfortunately, I cannot understand any Chinese at all, which makes this trip a little bit difficult. And we'll get back to that a bit at the end because I'm going to need your help whenever it comes to that. I'm Kraft. I'm senior editor for Maker magazine. What I do is I write stories, I get other people to write stories, and I travel to Maker Fairs all over the world. I've been to Maker Fairs on most continents. That map you saw up there earlier, I've been to a lot of those dots. I got a little bit of a chance to walk around at least the Polytechnic University this morning, and it was beautiful. This is a beautiful place. And before I came in here, I got a chance to walk around this Maker Faire. And the people organizing this Maker Faire are truly passionate about Maker Fairs, or makers, and it shows. But they contacted me and they asked me to come here and talk about sustainability and makers. And it really made me think about how I learned about sustainability as a child. I grew up in the middle of the United States, right in the center of the United States in the 1980s. And I have to tell you that we didn't really learn much about sustainability. I mean, we were told in school, you gotta recycle, but that was pretty much it. And then all through the 80s and through the 90s, most of what you would see in terms of promoting sustainability in any way was art. So let's look at some Make Magazine stuff that involves art. Oh, that was just Make Magazine to me. So here's a little bit of art. Here's an example of some art to promote sustainability. This just looks like a big whale, right? Well, if you look at each of these tiles, these scales on this whale, I know whales don't have scales, but this one does. They're made out of single-use plastic that has been harvested, tons of it that has been harvested, mainly HDPE. It was ground up, stuffed into these forms, heated up, and made into these scales that comprise that whale you see there. This is at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California, and this is to promote sustainability. This goes back to the very basic stuff we were learning in the 80s, where you look at art to think about sustainability. It really doesn't help the environment much, but it helps raise awareness. Things don't always have to be so complicated. This is a very common one in the area that I come from. This is a satellite dish that's been turned into a bird bath. Extremely simple. In the area that I live, these satellite dishes are everywhere. People put them on their homes, they get a new service, they leave the old one on the home and put a new one on. Sometimes you'll see homes with 3 or 4 satellite dishes. And so a bird bath is a nice way to upcycle that instead of putting it in the trash. But again, we're still talking about these tiny little things that barely make a difference. One last thing on recycling. One of the latest things that we've been seeing is 3D printer filament recycling. But again, we're talking micro scale here. You'd be in your home, you'd maybe recycle a few filaments. This unit here, the company is called 3Devo, I believe. And they actually are the first ones that I've seen that have put together a system that allows you to extrude your own filaments at home, and it actually measures the width and gives a proper width for 3D printing. I don't know, we'll see how that turns out. But all these are pretty, I don't know, they're tiny, they're home, they're small, and they're not making a huge impact on the world. So what is? Well, for me, the interesting things that are making an impact on the world now are what we call citizen science. I don't know, you probably have another name for it here, but we call it citizen science, and that is where the citizens, the individuals in the public, are measuring the environment around them and holding the companies and the governments accountable for those things. We'll talk about one group called Public Lab mainly here. Public Lab publishes open source projects that allow you to create the tools to measure your environment and measure the things around you. In the States, at least, this is extremely important because we have very, very, very few people in the government whose job it is to go around and test things like environmental impacts, air quality, water quality, and things like that. Often that job falls on the companies themselves to test and then go and say, oh, we've been bad, we hurt this water over here. And so you can imagine they often do the minimal amount of testing. Public Lab and groups like them put out these tools and put the power in the people's hands to hold these groups accountable. They also create kits that can be purchased for cheap if you wish to stock up for your makerspace or something like that. Now, You can also just go to their website, publiclab.org, and find the plans to make your own. So let's talk about some of the tools that they've published. Now they collect things from around the internet. This one here is a spectrometer. If any of you go to the Polytechnic, maybe you've used a spectrometer, and maybe you know it's an expensive piece of equipment typically. However, this one is not. It's made typically from a Raspberry Pi and a webcam. And that allows it to be very, very cheap. And if you put a spectrometer, a cheap spectrometer, in the hands of 1,000 people and tell them to go out and look at whatever they want, they'll find all kinds of things, sometimes good, sometimes bad. What these people are doing is they're uploading their results to a site called SpectroWorkbench.org. And you can go there and you can compare your results to their results. Sometimes it's something simple like taking a picture out the window. And you can see the results of the spectrometer measurements out the window of the sky. Sometimes it's something like measuring the water quality in your area. Let's go on to another example. This here, they call it the People's Microscope. Quick little tip, a little hack here. You can take a regular webcam, pop the lens off of the end, flip it over, and put it back on, and that allows you to use that webcam as a microscope. So in areas that have had catastrophes or maybe just do not have the affluence and money, a microscope is a very difficult thing to get your hands on. However, a webcam can be a lot easier. This is just a simple setup that allows for micro adjustments of a slide right above the webcam. This one right here is probably the one that I recommend the most to people just getting started out. This is a simple air quality sensor. All it is an Arduino, an LED, an RGB LED, and a particulate sensor. Now this is not going to be giving you incredibly accurate readings or incredibly meaningful readings, but what it does do is it gives you real-time feedback. That LED will change color depending on the amount of particulates it senses in the air. This is perfect for getting children involved in citizen science, because you can see it's extremely easy to put together, and they can just walk around their home. They can walk into the kitchen when somebody's cooking and say, oh, it's not, maybe not the best air quality in here, or they can walk down the street and they can see in real time. And that kind of real-time feedback can hook people on the idea of doing science themselves. Now this last one is my favorite. This is my absolute favorite. This one's called Babylegs. This is a trawl. I don't know, you guys probably have a different name for this. It's something that you pull behind a boat in water, or you pull it through water to collect samples. Now a trawl for collecting microplastics in the States costs about $3,500. This, called Babylegs, is made out of a pair of leggings for a baby and costs about $5 and does the exact same job. You just take some leggings for a baby, you stuff some water bottles down in the end with holes cut in them, you throw it out in the water, you pull it through, and the mesh is fine enough to collect some of those microplastics. Babylegs is my favorite just because it looks silly and I like the name, Babylegs. So, I know this has been very short and very concise. I really didn't know what to expect when coming here. This is my first Shenzhen Maker Faire. And I'm so excited to see it, but I need to ask a favor before I go. We have a big blind spot at Make. We have a huge blind spot, and that's China. We have friends in China. We have Violet and Eric and them. We have friends here, but what we need are more voices. We need you people to tell us the stories. We need to put your voices in the magazine. We need to put your voices online. We need to hear your stories, because right now, Make Magazine is pretty focused on the States because it's easy, and pretty focused on Europe because that's where we first expanded. But there is so much going on here that every time that I've visited, I've been blown away. Just absolutely blown away. I would say there's maybe more going on here than in the States and Europe combined. But we don't have these stories. We need these stories. And since I can't understand you, I'm gonna have to rely on you to contact me, to work with me, and maybe we publish your words. But what we need is your help. We need you to help tell these stories about the local makers here. You can reach out to me, I'll be around, I'll give you a business card. You can talk to Violet or Eric or any of the organizers of the event, and they can put you in contact with me. But we need your stories, whether it's a hobbyist, somebody who just made something because they were passionate about it, or whether there are people making big impacts in sustainability. That's going to be our major focus for 2020 in sustainability. We need you to tell us those stories. Thank you very much.